Run away! You cannot free me! Save my baby! Run!
I am a mermaid. My name is Mommy Tula, and I am not human like everyone at school believes. Before I was born, my mother was captured by fishermen from the village. She was tied to a tree when I came into this world. A kind young woman named Mariama saved me and raised me as her own daughter. Because of her, I was able to go to school, and I became smarter than every other student. But a secret this powerful can never stay hidden forever.
The sun burned fiercely above the village of Nandira, but strangely, the riverbank remained silent. No fishermen sang, no children played near the water. Even the birds avoided the sacred river that day. Because everyone in the village knew one
A young woman was seen
rule.
near the sacred river yesterday.
Did you see anyone carrying a child? I only went to fetch water. I saw nobody.
The sun burned fiercely above the village of Nandira, but strangely, the riverbank remained silent. No fishermen sang, no children played near the water. Even the birds avoided the sacred river that day. Because everyone in the village knew one terrifying rule. On the forbidden day, no human must approach the river. The elders believed ancient spirits wandered freely across the water during those hours. Anyone foolish enough to go near the river risked disappearing forever. But greed is stronger than fear in the hearts of some men. Far away from the village, two fishermen pushed their old wooden canoe through the dark green water. Chuka was tall, muscular, and fearless. Obina was thinner, nervous, and constantly glancing over his shoulder. The river moved strangely beneath them. Obina swallowed nervously. "Chuka, maybe we should go back." Chuka laughed loudly while throwing the fishing net deeper into the river. "Today is exactly why we should be here. Nobody else will dare to fish. Whatever we catch belongs only to us." The water suddenly jerked violently. The canoe shook hard. Obina nearly fell into the river. "Something is inside the net," he shouted. Both men grabbed the ropes with all their strength. The net felt impossibly heavy. The river splashed violently around them as if something beneath the water was fighting to escape. Chuka's eyes slowly widened with excitement. "Pull harder!" With one final effort, the net exploded out of the water, and both fishermen froze. Inside the net was not a fish. It was a woman. No, not completely human. A beautiful blue mermaid lay trapped beneath the ropes, her glowing silver-blue tail twisting desperately under the sunlight. Long, wet hair covered her trembling shoulders. But the most shocking thing was her stomach. She was heavily pregnant. Obina screamed and stumbled backward. "Spirits protect us!" But Chuka stared at her with greedy eyes instead of fear. "A pregnant mermaid," he whispered. "We are rich." The mermaid struggled weakly against the ropes, her glowing eyes filled with tears. "Please," she begged softly, "let me return to the water." But Chuka only smiled coldly. "Do you know how much money people would pay for a creature like you?" Obina hesitated. "Chuka, maybe we should release her." But Chuka grabbed Obina's shoulder roughly. "Think carefully. This is enough wealth to change our lives forever." The mermaid suddenly cried out in pain. She clutched her stomach tightly. The baby was coming. Obina panicked instantly. "She's giving birth!" But instead of compassion, greed filled Chuka's eyes even more. "The baby will make us even richer." Together, they dragged the weak mermaid deep into the riverside forest where nobody ever dared to enter. They tied her tightly against an ancient tree using thick ropes. The mermaid cried helplessly while magical water floated strangely around her trembling body. "Please," she whispered, "my child." Chuka covered her mouth roughly. "Save your strength. Tomorrow the buyer will arrive." The two fishermen disappeared into the forest, leaving the suffering mermaid completely alone. Not far away, inside the village, a young woman named Mariama stood quietly beside her small home. Mariama was only 23 years old. She had beautiful dark skin, long black braided hair, and kind eyes filled with sadness. Since the death of her mother, she had lived under the cruelty of her stepmother, Inkiru. That afternoon, Nkiru stormed outside angrily holding an empty clay pot. "Mariama!" she shouted. Mariama lowered her head respectfully. "Yes, Mama." "Go fetch water from the river." Mariama's heart nearly stopped. "The forbidden river?" Nkiru stepped closer angrily. "Did I ask for your opinion?" She slapped Mariama hard across the face. "You are lazy and useless. Go now!" Mariama's eyes filled with tears, but she obeyed silently. The village people stared nervously as she walked toward the sacred forest carrying the clay pot on her head. Some villagers whispered prayers for her safety. The deeper Mariama walked into the forest, the stranger everything felt. No birds sang, no insects moved, even the wind seemed afraid. Then suddenly, she heard crying. Not human crying, something softer, stranger, filled with pain. Mariama froze. The sound came again. Slowly, she followed it through the trees, and then she saw her, a glowing blue mermaid tied helplessly against a giant tree. Mariama gasped in horror. The mermaid looked weak and exhausted. Her stomach tightened painfully again. The baby was coming. The mermaid looked directly into Mariama's frightened eyes. "Please," she whispered weakly, "help my child." Mariama's hands trembled. I don't know what to do." Another painful scream escaped the mermaid's lips. Then suddenly, the forest echoed with distant voices. The fishermen were returning. Panic filled the mermaid's glowing eyes. "They are coming," she whispered desperately. "You cannot free me in time." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Please save my baby." Moments later, the newborn child entered the world. But this was no ordinary child. The baby glowed softly like moonlight reflecting on water. Tiny blue scales shimmered gently beneath her skin. Mariama stared at the child in complete amazement. The mermaid held her baby lovingly for only a few seconds before distant footsteps grew louder. The fishermen were close. The mermaid quickly placed the baby into Mariama's arms. "You must run." Mariama shook her head fearfully. "They will kill me." The mermaid held her hand tightly. "The river chose you." Mariama looked down at the glowing baby. The child opened beautiful shining eyes and touched Mariama's fingers gently. At that moment, something changed inside her heart. She could not abandon this child. The fishermen's voices echoed through the forest. "Hurry! The buyer is waiting!" The mermaid pushed the baby gently toward Mariama. "Please." Mariama finally nodded. Tears filled her eyes as she wrapped the glowing newborn carefully inside her cloth. "What should I call her?" Mariama whispered. The mermaid smiled weakly. "Mommy Tula." Then the mermaid looked toward the forest one final time. "Tell her everything when she becomes older." Mariama turned and ran through the forest as fast as she could. Behind her, the voices of the fishermen grew louder and louder. Branches snapped beneath her feet while the glowing baby rested quietly against her chest. The future of two worlds now rested in Mariama's trembling hands, and neither of them knew that this secret would one day change the entire village forever. Years passed quietly in the village of Nandira. The secret Mariama protected slowly grew into a beautiful young girl named Mommy Tula. To the villagers, she looked like an ordinary child. But inside the small hidden house near the sacred forest, Mariama knew the truth. Mommy Tula was not fully human. Every year, her strange connection to water became stronger. When she was still a baby, she could calm storms simply by touching water. When she cried, tiny drops floated around her face like magic. And whenever she became sick, ordinary water healed her almost instantly. Mariama protected her carefully from the world, especially from the river, especially from people. Because deep inside her heart, Mariama feared the same fishermen might still be searching for the missing mermaid child. One bright morning, 14-year-old Mommy Tula sat happily inside a large water basin hidden behind Mariama's house. Sunlight danced beautifully across her glowing blue tail beneath the water. She splashed happily while her long dark hair shimmered with soft blue reflections. Mama Mariama, she laughed. I really love the water. Mariama smiled warmly while folding clothes nearby. I know. Mommy Tula's smile slowly faded. But you never allow me to see the ocean. Mariama's face became serious immediately. She walked closer and lowered her voice carefully. You must never go near the sea. Why? Mommy Tula asked softly. Mariama hesitated. How could she explain a world full of greedy humans to a girl who still saw beauty in everyone? There are dangerous people outside this village, Mariama finally whispered. People who fear what they do not understand. Mommy Tula lowered her eyes sadly. She loved Mariama deeply and obeyed her without question. But sometimes, late at night, she secretly dreamed of the ocean. She dreamed of glowing underwater kingdoms, of voices calling her name from beneath the waves, of a mother she could barely remember. The next morning, Mommy Tula prepared for school. At 14 years old, she had already become the most admired girl in the village. Her beauty seemed almost supernatural. Her dark skin glowed softly beneath the sunlight. Her long black hair flowed like silk, and her calm brown eyes carried a mysterious sadness that fascinated everyone around her. But beauty was not the only thing that made her different. Mommy Tula was incredibly intelligent. She learned faster than anyone else in school. She solved mathematics problems before the teacher even finished writing them. She remembered every lesson perfectly, and somehow she always seemed to know things nobody had taught her. Some students admired her, others feared her, but one girl hated her deeply.
Nikki. Before Mommy Tula arrived at school, Nikki had been known as the smartest and most beautiful girl in the village. Now, everyone talked only about Mommy Tula, and jealousy slowly poisoned Nikki's heart. That afternoon, the teacher wrote a difficult question across the board. The classroom became silent. Nobody knew the answer. Then calmly, Mommy Tula raised her hand. The teacher smiled proudly. Yes, Mommy Tula? She stood gracefully and solved the entire problem perfectly. The classroom exploded with surprise. She's unbelievable, one student whispered. Nikki clenched her fists beneath the table. Her anger burned stronger every day. During break time, several girls surrounded Mommy Tula excitedly. How are you so smart? Your hair is so beautiful. You always smell like rain. Mommy Tula laughed softly, embarrassed by the attention. But across the schoolyard, Nikki watched silently. Something about Mommy Tula felt unnatural, too perfect, too strange, and Nikki became determined to uncover the truth. Days later, heavy rain clouds gathered above the village during class. Thunder shook the sky. The teacher sighed nervously. Suddenly, the school roof began leaking badly. Rainwater spilled across the classroom floor. The students screamed and jumped onto benches. But strangely, the water flowing toward Mommy Tula suddenly stopped. It swirled gently around her feet without touching her clothes. For one brief moment, the water almost seemed alive. Nikki saw everything. Her eyes widened slowly. "What are you?" she whispered. Mommy Tula quickly stepped backward, breaking the strange movement of the water. The other students noticed nothing, but Nikki never forgot what she saw. That evening, Mommy Tula returned home nervously. Mariama immediately noticed the fear in her eyes. "What happened?" Mommy Tula sat quietly beside her. The water moved again. Mariama's face turned pale. "Did anyone see?" Mommy Tula hesitated. "I think Nikki noticed." Mariama stood up immediately. "You must be more careful." "But I cannot control it sometimes," Mommy Tula whispered sadly. Mariama knelt beside her gently. "You are growing older now. Your powers are becoming stronger." Mommy Tula looked up nervously. "What if people discover the truth?" Mariama touched her face softly. "Then we protect each other." That night, while the village slept, Mommy Tula secretly walked outside. The moonlight reflected beautifully across the quiet river. She stared at the water silently. Then, slowly, the river began glowing. Soft blue light rose from the surface and surrounded her body gently. The water moved toward her like it recognized her. Mommy Tula closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt complete. But hidden behind a nearby tree, Nikki watched everything. Her breathing became shaky with fear and excitement. She could not believe her eyes. Mommy Tula was controlling the river. Nikki slowly stepped backward. This cannot be human. The next morning at school, Nikki could barely hide her obsession. She watched Mommy Tula constantly, every movement, every smile, every drop of water nearby. Finally, during lunch break, Nikki gathered several students around her. "I know Mommy Tula's secret." The students laughed. "What secret?" Nikki lowered her voice dramatically. "She is not normal." The others exchanged confused looks. "What do you mean?" Nikki leaned closer. "I saw the river obey her." The students became silent. Rumors spread quickly through the village. By sunset, whispers followed Mommy Tula everywhere she walked. "She's cursed. She's magical. She belongs to the river spirits." Mommy Tula pretended not to hear them, but deep inside, fear slowly grew, because she realized something terrible. Secrets never stay hidden forever. And somewhere beyond the village, the ocean was still calling her name. Far beyond the village of Nandira, beyond the forests, beyond the rivers, beyond the endless horizon of the ocean, there existed a hidden underwater kingdom that no ordinary human had ever seen, the kingdom of the mermaids. Massive glowing corals illuminated the deep blue waters like underwater stars. Golden fish swam through crystal palaces carved into ancient stones. Beautiful mermaids moved gracefully through the currents, while magical whales sang across the sea. But despite its beauty, fear had entered the kingdom. The queen of the mermaids sat silently upon her glowing pearl throne. Her silver crown shimmered beneath the ocean light, but sadness filled her eyes. For many years, mermaids near the surface had been disappearing, captured by greedy humans, sold like treasures, never returning home. And now another mermaid was missing. Her name was Seraphina, a beautiful young mermaid with glowing turquoise scales and a gentle heart. 3 nights earlier, she had vanished near the surface waters. The entire kingdom searched desperately for her. Inside the royal palace, a young royal guard swam nervously toward the queen. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "we still cannot find Seraphina." The queen closed her eyes painfully. "The humans have taken another one." Far above the ocean, hidden inside a massive transport truck crossing a lonely highway, Seraphina floated weakly inside a giant invisible seawater container. Magical chains restrained her wrists. Her long silver blue hair drifted slowly beneath the water. Every movement looked exhausted. Outside the container, 2 traffickers laughed proudly while driving toward the city. "When we reach the United States," one man said greedily, "we will become richer than kings." The second trafficker smiled. "No one has ever sold a real mermaid before." Inside the truck cabin sat a quiet 18-year-old boy named Zizboy. Unlike the others, he remained silent. Zizboy was the son of the traffickers' leader. Tall, calm, and intelligent, he had traveled with his father since childhood, but deep inside, something about this journey felt wrong. Every night, he heard the mermaid crying softly inside the container. Every night, guilt grew heavier inside his heart. Late that evening, while the truck stopped beside an empty road, the traffickers fell asleep near a small fire. But Zizboy could not sleep. The crying continued, soft, weak, painful. Finally, unable to ignore it anymore, he quietly approached the hidden water container. For the first time, he saw the mermaid clearly, and he froze. She did not look like a monster. She looked terrified, lonely, broken. Seraphina slowly lifted her glowing eyes toward him. Fear crossed her face immediately. She expected cruelty, but instead, Zizboy gently placed fresh fish and clean water near the edge of the container. "I brought food," he whispered softly. Seraphina stared at him in shock. Humans had only shown her violence until now. "Why are you helping me?" she asked weakly. Zizboy looked away sadly. because nobody deserves to live like a prisoner. The mermaid slowly moved closer inside the glowing water. For the first time since her capture, hope touched her heart. That night they spoke quietly for hours. Serafina told him stories about the ocean kingdom, about glowing coral cities, about magical sea creatures, about ancient songs hidden beneath the waves. And Zizboy listened with amazement. Everything he had been taught about mermaids was a lie. They were not monsters. They were people. The following morning, Zizboy's father discovered him near the container. His face darkened immediately. "What are you doing?" Zizboy stepped backward nervously. "Nothing." But his father saw the food floating inside the water. Anger exploded in his eyes. "This creature is not your friend," he growled. "She is our fortune." Zizboy looked toward the weak mermaid sadly. "She's suffering." His father grabbed his arm roughly. "Feelings do not matter. Money matters." Then he leaned closer coldly. "When we sell her in America, our lives will change forever." But despite his father's warning, Zizboy continued helping Serafina secretly every night, and slowly an impossible friendship began growing between them. Meanwhile, far away in Nandira village, Mami Tula's connection to the ocean grew stronger every day. At night she began hearing strange voices inside her dreams, whispers carried by water, songs from distant oceans. Sometimes she even saw glowing underwater palaces she had never visited before. One evening, while standing beside the river alone, Mami Tula placed her hand gently on the water. Suddenly the river glowed brightly. A vision appeared inside the water, an underwater kingdom, mermaids swimming desperately through dark oceans, and a young imprisoned mermaid trapped inside a glass container. Mami Tula stepped backward in shock. The vision disappeared instantly. Mariama approached from behind,